That's it. A handbag. My sister snickered, unwrapping my gift. My mom rolled her eyes and declared, "He used to give real gifts before he got stingy." I just smiled and announced, "You're correct. I used to." That night, I canceled every auto payment, messaged the bank, and locked the account. By morning, they discovered a legal notice taped to the refrigerator right beside her birthday list. I, 32M, never thought a birthday party would be the catalyst for completely restructuring my life. Looking back now, 3 months later, I realized that moment when my sister unwrapped her gift was the final crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years. The handbag was beautiful. Italian leather, handcrafted, from a boutique downtown. It cost me $600, not exactly pocket change for someone supporting half his family's lifestyle. But as she held it up with that look of barely concealed disappointment, I felt something inside me shift permanently. My sister announced that this was it, just a handbag, her voice dripping with the kind of entitled disappointment I'd grown tired of hearing. She'd been expecting something bigger, something more expensive, something that would impress her friends on social media. The same friends who never knew that her designer lifestyle was funded entirely by my paycheck. Mom chimed in immediately, rolling her eyes as she declared I used to give real gifts before I got stingy. Real gifts, like the $15,000 European vacation I'd paid for last Christmas, or the designer jewelry I'd been buying for birthdays and holidays for the past 5 years, or the monthly allowances, the paid rent, the covered car payments, the insurance premiums, the credit card bills. I just smiled, the kind of smile that probably should have warned them something fundamental had changed. I told them they were absolutely correct. I used to give real gifts. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning this moment for months. Not the confrontation, but the revelation. I'd been documenting everything, preparing for the day when their gratitude deficit finally exceeded my willingness to subsidize it. That night, while they celebrated with friends at the expensive restaurant I'd unknowingly paid for through my sister's credit card, I sat in my home office with my laptop and phone. I started with the bank. A simple call to freeze all accounts that had automatic transfers to family members. Then I logged into every platform where I'd set up recurring payments on their behalf. The gym memberships went first, then the streaming services, the phone plan that covered 4 lines, the car insurance that protected 3 vehicles I didn't drive, the health insurance premiums for people who hadn't thanked me once in 2 years. Each cancellation felt like removing a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. By midnight, I'd methodically dismantled the financial ecosystem that had been supporting their comfortable lives. But I wasn't finished. I spent the next 2 hours drafting a legal notice. Not a lawsuit, yet, but a formal demand for repayment of loans that had never been officially loans. I'd been keeping meticulous records since my divorce 2 years ago when my ex-wife's attorney had advised me to document every financial transaction. Smart advice, as it turned out. The notice was comprehensive. Every gift over $200 from the past 3 years, reclassified as loans due to consistent patterns of financial expectation and entitlement. Every monthly payment, every covered expense, every crisis bailout, all documented with dates, amounts, and bank statements. I printed it on legal letterhead. A friend from law school helped me format it properly and drove to Mom's house at dawn. The birthday list was still taped to the refrigerator, my sister's handwriting demanding specific brands and minimum price points for upcoming holidays. I placed the legal notice right beside it. The first call came at 7:30. Mom's voice was shrill with panic and confusion. She demanded to know what this paperwork meant and why her cards weren't working. I explained calmly that I was transitioning from gift giver to creditor, and she now had 30 days to establish a payment plan for the outstanding balance of $47,000. My sister called an hour later, her tone shifting between rage and disbelief. She couldn't understand how I could be so cruel, so vindictive over one little comment about a handbag. She insisted she'd been grateful, that they all had been grateful, that I was overreacting to a moment of disappointment. I reminded her about the birthday list on the refrigerator, the one where she'd specified that gifts under $500 weren't worth giving, the one where she'd written my name next to items totaling over $3,000 for her upcoming birthday month alone. The family meeting happened that weekend. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who'd been indirectly benefiting from my financial generosity over the years. They'd gathered to stage what they probably thought would be an intervention. Instead, it became a reckoning. Uncle Jim started by telling me I was being petty and that family takes care of family. I agreed completely. Then I handed him an invoice for his share of Mom's assisted living payments that I'd been covering for 18 months. He'd been telling everyone how proud he was of contributing to her care, but the only contribution he'd made was letting me pay his portion. Cousin Sarah tried the emotional approach, reminding me how close our family had always been, how we'd always supported each other through difficult times. I acknowledged our closeness and pulled out a folder documenting every time I provided that support, financially, while receiving nothing but criticism for not doing more. The real revelation came when my sister finally exploded and accused me of trying to destroy the family over money. She shouted that I made good money and should be happy to share it with people I loved. She said I was being selfish and cruel, that the family had always been proud of my success and grateful for my generosity. I asked her to name one time in the past year when anyone had expressed gratitude without immediately following it with a request for something else. The silence was profound. Then I asked them to calculate how much money they thought I'd given to family members in the past 3 years. Their estimates ranged from $5,000 to $15,000. I showed them the real number, $93,000. Cash gifts, paid bills, covered emergencies, subsidized lifestyles, and absorbed debts. Mom started crying, insisting she'd never asked for so much, that she'd never realized the total. I reminded her about the conversation 6 months ago when she'd complained that I wasn't contributing enough to family expenses and suggested I needed to step up like a real man. Update 1. The legal notice had a 45-day response deadline. On day 30, I received a call from a mediator my family had hired. They wanted to negotiate a settlement that would allow everyone to move forward without destroying family relationships. The mediator explained that my family was prepared to acknowledge they'd taken advantage of my generosity and were willing to make token payments toward the outstanding balance. In exchange, they hoped I'd consider resuming some level of financial support, perhaps at a more sustainable level. I thanked the mediator and declined. I explained that the issue wasn't sustainable levels of support, it was sustainable levels of respect. The handbag comment wasn't about ingratitude, it was about entitlement. They hadn't just expected my money. They'd expected increasingly expensive demonstrations of my affection, and they'd felt comfortable criticizing me when those demonstrations fell short of their expectations. On day 40, my sister called directly. Her tone had changed completely. She apologized sincerely for the birthday comment and admitted she'd become spoiled and entitled. She said she understood why I was upset and wanted to make things right between us. I appreciated the apology but told her the damage was deeper than one comment. I'd been enabling a family dynamic where my worth was measured by my financial contributions, and they'd all participated in reinforcing that dynamic. The legal action wasn't about punishment. It was about establishing new boundaries. Day 45 came and went without payment or formal response. On day 46, I filed the lawsuit. Update 2. The lawsuit created exactly the family crisis I'd expected. Suddenly, relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years were calling to express disappointment in my choices. People who'd benefited indirectly from my family subsidies were reaching out to explain why I was destroying something precious over money. But something interesting happened during those conversations. When I started detailing specific instances of financial exploitation, several family members shared their own stories. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been systematically supporting Mom and my sister's lifestyle expectations. My cousin Mike admitted he'd been avoiding family gatherings for 2 years because he couldn't afford to keep up with the gift expectations and constant requests for loans. My aunt revealed that she'd been stressed about finances since she started covering various family expenses that used to be shared responsibilities. We realized that Mom and my sister had been playing family members against each other, creating competitive generosity while never contributing substantially themselves. I wasn't the family's primary supporter. I was just the most successful mark in a long-running con. The revelation changed everything. Instead of fighting my lawsuit, 5 other family members joined it. We weren't suing for money anymore. We were documenting patterns of financial manipulation that had been damaging family relationships for years. Mom's response was to play victim spectacularly. She couldn't understand how her children could be so cruel to someone who'd sacrificed everything for family. She reminded everyone about her years of unpaid childcare and emotional support. As if love was a transactional commodity that she'd been investing for future financial returns. My sister tried a different approach. She got engaged to her boyfriend of 6 months and announced that the lawsuit was preventing her from planning her dream wedding. She created a social media campaign about greedy family members who prioritize money over celebrating love. The engagement lasted 3 weeks. Apparently, when her boyfriend realized that her lifestyle wasn't actually supported by family money but by family lawsuits, he developed concerns about their financial future together. Update 3. 6 months after the birthday party, we settled out of court. Not because they couldn't, but because we'd achieved something more valuable than money. We'd established legal documentation of the financial manipulation and created a framework for healthy family relationships moving forward. The settlement required Mom and my sister to attend financial counseling and prohibited them from requesting money from family members for 2 years. It also established that any future financial gifts would be documented as gifts, with clear expectations and no strings attached. Most importantly, it freed the entire family from a toxic dynamic where love was measured by financial contributions and gratitude was conditional on continued generosity. My sister eventually got a full-time job, her first since college. She's actually quite capable when she's not expecting others to fund her lifestyle. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly, based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Mom was the most resistant to change. She'd spent years viewing her children's success as her retirement plan and couldn't understand why that plan was problematic. She's gradually learning to live within her means, though she still occasionally tests boundaries by mentioning financial difficulties. The rest of the family has actually grown closer. Without the pressure of competitive generosity and hidden resentments about financial exploitation, family gatherings are genuinely enjoyable again. We split restaurant bills evenly, give reasonable gifts, and express appreciation for non-monetary contributions. I've learned to give gifts that reflect genuine affection rather than fear of disappointing people. Last month, I gave my sister a book of poetry she'd mentioned loving in college. She cried when she opened it, not because it was expensive, but because it showed I'd been listening to her thoughts rather than her demands. The handbag incident taught me that sometimes the most generous thing you can do for people you love is to stop enabling their worst impulses. My family is healthier now that they're supporting themselves, and our relationships are stronger now that they're based on choice rather than obligation. I still smile when I remember that moment at the birthday party. But now it's a different kind of smile, one that recognizes the beginning of something better rather than the end of something broken. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the opportunity to become their better self, even if they don't appreciate it immediately.